Would people fear a government shutdown if the government didn't run the roads and the schools? Congressman Scott Garrett outlines his bills to let states opt out of these federal programs in the name of the 10th Amendment, which drives these principles. That government is best which governs least. The people are entitled to a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. The Constitution was written to keep the government off the people's backs. Schweikert, Garrett, Hume, Freedom Watch. The revolution continues now.
Tonight on the docket, a government shutdown averted for now. The fact that the budget passed the Senate only the funds the federal government can use will last for the next 45 days is laughable. How can you run an organization on a 45-day budget? And what will happen come November 18th? Will Capitol Hill's Chicken Littles return to cry that the sky will fall if the government shuts down by Thanksgiving? Will our nation be held hostage to this perpetual display of brinksmanship? And as if that isn't bad enough, the Obama administration is still promoting its Big Government Americans Job Act as the path out of the recession. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner had a bit of a gaffe last night when he tried to explain why the Americans Job Act is a bargain, even though it will cost taxpayers $200,000 for every job it creates. Here's what he said to ABC News. We can borrow money for 10 years as the government of the United States because people have confidence in this country. We can do it at less than 2%. The responsible path now is to take advantage of the unique position we're in as a country. People have a lot of confidence in us. That's right. The Secretary of the Treasury wants to take advantage of people's confidence in the United States of America to borrow more money. This is absurd. Bankers and traders are welcoming more borrowing and bailouts in the short term, but over time, debt will destroy the global financial system and will prolong our economic misery. Here with his reactions, New Jersey Republican Congressman Scott Garrett. Congressman Garrett, it's a pleasure. Welcome here.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm thinking of that expression, someone who gives confidence like that is called a confidence man, isn't he?
He is a confidence man, and, and you know it, and most of the Republicans in Congress know it. Why did the House of Representatives pass a continuing resolution for just 6 months? Why did the Senate agree to extend the government just for 45 days? How can investors, consumers, ordinary taxpayers have any faith and credit in a government that doesn't know what it's going to do 45 days from now?
Well, we don't. And actually, all we have is the extension out until next week when we come back into session. This is a mini bridge loan that we basically did this week until we come back, and then we'll extend it out to November 18th, and then we'll extend it out until the after the election. Well, there can't be any confidence in the American government right now as far as the process that we're going through. And why is that? And that's because the other side of the aisle, the Democrats in the Senate, unfortunately, are not coming to the table with what they want to do. The Senate has not passed a budget in what is close to 900 days.
Wow. One of the things that the federal government spends money on is money that it gives to the states, and in return for that money, there are strings attached. We'll pave Route 80 in New Jersey, but you have to lower the speed limit. We'll fund schools in Sussex and Bergen County, but here's what the pupils have to be taught, and here's what their test grades have to be. Is there any way to break that cycle, to get the feds out of the business of telling locals how to run local government?
So the Fed should be out of the business of doing anything that they have no constitutional authority to be engaged in.
Amen.
And so if you look at the Constitution, if you thumb through it here, we'd say, well, is there anything in here about roads and what have you as far as your local back roads in your town? No. Is there anything in the Constitution with regard to local public education? No. So we should pull the federal government out of all those areas. And I have two bills that would do that. One's called the State Act, which basically goes to the transportation aspect. The other is the LEARN Act, Local Education Authority returns now. Both do the same thing. Both says federal government, get out of our lives, let the states, the counties, municipalities do it.
You are a Republican, and the Republicans run the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
You proposed these pieces of legislation in 2005 and 2007.
I know
We're now at the end of 2011. This stuff hasn't even made it to the House floor.
Well, it's not for lack of trying. It's a
no, I'm not critical of you, obviously. My heart is with you on this. I'm critical of the leadership. What are they afraid of? At least let members of Congress vote on it.
Well, I guess what it is, it's whether you're Republican or Democrat, it's nice when people come to you and say, can you do me a favor? Can you help me out here? And that's really what happens with education dollars and transportation dollars. People, constituents, come hat in hand to your office as a congressman and says, can you help fund the Route 80 project? Can you help fund this? And neither party wants to give up that right and abdicate it back to the states.
When I was speaking with one of your colleagues, I won't mention his name, a small government libertarian Republican from a Midwestern state, and I was questioning whether or not FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is even constitutional. He said it doesn't matter if it's constitutional. We have to do this because it's right. People are suffering. They don't have insurance. They were hit by Hurricane Irene. I was hit by Hurricane Irene. You were hit by Hurricane Irene. You were my congressman. Yeah. A lot of our neighbors were. But if we use as the baseline for what the federal government does, not is it constitutional, but is it right? Well, then we don't have a constitution at all. Then we just have the collective judgment of what the majority thinks at a given moment is right.
Right. So the contract that people signed 230 years ago when they entered into the Constitution means nothing. And that's not how contract law works. When you and I enter into a contract at any point, it's by what the definitions were at that time, and it lasts for the life of the contract until what? Until we amend that contract. We have the opportunity to amend the Constitution if we want to do all these things. We haven't. We haven't given the right to go into education, transportation, these other areas, and that reason, turn it back to the states.
You can't even get Congress to vote on a simple piece of legislation that would require, whenever the Congress does something, the legislation itself point to the clause in the Constitution that authorizes it. They wouldn't even let a vote occur on that.
So we tried hard on that. That was something that with the freshman class we pushed really hard to get in, and we took the first step. So now you have to put on the first page of your bill what constitutional authority there is supposedly in it. I went even further. I said there's ramifications. As you say, we should have to actually have a vote each time on it, and you have to be specific. You can't just give the general welfare clause, and that's what almost every member of Congress is doing right now. General welfare clause, as you know, doesn't give us in Congress carte blanche to do all these things.
Right.
It just basically says anything that we do have to apply has to apply across the board.
It has to apply to everyone.
So what we said is, and it didn't happen, we said in every bill you have to give a specific enumeration of what power Constitution gives to you to do that.
And the Republican leadership will not let that bill come to the floor for a vote.
Correct.
You have your work cut out for you, Congressman.
We'd be fighting, that's for sure.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.